What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Gamecite Chronicles, the console gaming podcast where we sit down each and every week to talk about video games. I'm your host, Bonfire, and this is episode number 13. And for those of you that tuned in last week, I'd like to say a thank you. Downloads are still going good, and the YouTube channel is starting to pick back up again, which is really exciting. So if you're checking this out on YouTube, I appreciate you, and be sure to subscribe. And one of the new things I've actually been trying out, as I've mentioned in the last couple of episodes, trying different little side pieces of content and stuff to support the show, is YouTube Shorts. So I've been dabbling in that a little bit with about 1 to 2 a week these past couple of weeks. And it's been fun, I gotta say. It's been pretty fun putting those together and putting those out there. It's fun. It's always funny because anytime I've ever done an unboxing video, those have always been my best videos. Even back then when I used to do YouTube channel, on the YouTube channel, doing regular videos. And my first YouTube short was the newest amiibo, Min, the Smash Bros. Amiibo that just came out. And I unboxed that, and that did pretty well, I would say, at least for, my first YouTube short. So anyways, go check those out over on YouTube. The YouTube channel is youtube.com/Gamecite. Appreciate it if you'd subscribe over there. We'll be doing some things over there. And of course, the podcast goes up there as well if you'd prefer to listen on that platform. As always, I hope you're having a good week out there. Hope you had a great week, got in some video games. I know I sure did, which we'll talk about there here shortly. But man, it's been an insane week for gaming news. And I feel like there's so much to discuss. And there's so many like little stories that we could dive into and stuff. So sometimes I gotta say I have trouble kind of cherry picking the stories just to not, rant on for hours and on end on each and every little bit of information that just drips into the ether out there related to video games. But there were definitely some big stories this week that we're going to get into, and I think it'll be pretty fun to discuss that. Now, for the uninitiated, the best way to support the show is to leave a comment and rating on the podcast platform that you're listening to. It's very much appreciated. It helps out with the algorithms, and I could certainly use some. Need some ratings to kind of get me out there a little bit more, so I'd appreciate it if you leave us a rating and some feedback. As always, if you're right into the show, that's one of the things I really want to incorporate more into the show. So drop a comment, say hello, and we'll get you in here. Also, I'd love it if you joined us over on Locals, the gamesitechronicles.locals.com. That's where I want to kind of cultivate a community and start to leverage that platform because it's a really cool platform that's a nice alternative. So check it out. That'd be awesome. And then follow us on Twitter at Gamesite Podcast is where it's a great RSS feed. And I've been using that more to just respond and just laugh at just some of that crazy internet stuff that goes on out there. So check us out there. And finally, new episodes of the show go up each and every Monday at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Now, for this week's episode, the big story and the big thing that I want to talk about is the big delay with Starfield and Redfall, and talk a little bit about what I think it means for Xbox. So we'll dive into that. There are also a couple other news items I wanted to touch on. There was a Gotham Knights demo, a nice 13-minute gameplay video that dropped, so I want to talk about that. Some Dead Space Remake news, as well as Nintendo put out an Indie World Showcase, so I kind of want to dig through that a little bit as well. But before we get into that, we're going to change up the format of the show slightly and get into the games that I am playing. As always, let me know which games you're playing, because that is always fun to read through. Within the comments, write us in. That would be awesome. So, what have I been playing? It's funny because last week I took a break from Elden Ring. And this week I haven't even touched Elden Ring, though I do plan to get back to it. But I played 2 different games that kind of came out of nowhere for me to jump into, but it just, I don't know, they kind of hit the moment right, I guess. So the first is the Gears 5 DLC Hive Busters, which I remember kind of seeing that on Game Pass as well as I think when it came out, and thinking that this is some like multiplayer, like co-op, maybe like some variation of Horde mode or something like that. Like multiplayer focused really is what I thought it was. And it's not. I did not realize that this is a single player campaign DLC. an extension of that. Like it's an extension of the game. And so once I realized that, I was like, oh shit, like I want to play that. That sounds fun. Kind of seems like it would, I don't know, hit the spot, you know? So I downloaded it and hopped into it. And I got to say, it was pretty fun. Though I would say it's a little short. A little short, though. I probably beat it in, I don't know, 4 hours or so or less. And I feel like it could have been a little longer. But as I'm playing it, I kind of just I reminisced and thought to myself a little bit on Gears of War and that franchise, and just how much I really enjoyed those games. Like especially the first three. I mean, it kind of brought me back and made me think about, and this will tie into when we talk a little bit more about Xbox in particular, but like the golden days of the 360 and playing through Gears of War. Like Gears of War, the first one was awesome. And then I think it really picked up with Gears of War 2. And then Gears of War 3 was such a great finale. And man, just playing through those games were just so good. Like I really, really enjoy them. And I got to say, actually, Gears of War 4 is honestly what I think one of the best Xbox One games out there. Like I thoroughly enjoyed that game. I thought they did a nice job with it being a new developer and Cliff Bleszinski not really being involved anymore. I thought they did a really nice job in kind of starting to tell this new story, introducing new characters, and paying homage to some of the original characters. I just thought they handled it really well. And there were some really fun moments in Gears of War 4. Man, that's just a really good game. Honestly, really good game. And I think it's better than Gears 5. I know a lot of people, especially the critics, like Gears 5 and really praised that game, especially with its kind of semi-open world. But I didn't think it was as good as everyone made it out to be. But the DLC was fun. So it was fun to get back into this franchise. And I think my biggest criticism of this DLC, besides it being a little short, is I felt like the characters could have used some more development and a little bit more history and background about them. Just because like the characters were interesting and you learn a little bit through their kind of banter as you're kind of navigating through, the missions and stuff like that. But I felt like with maybe just a little bit longer of a campaign or to allow us to understand these characters more and kind of where they came from and how this group came together to, start this like Hive Busters thing, I think would have been much better. But it was still fun nonetheless. And it was nice to kind of just play something different. Now, the other game I've been playing, which again is another kind of random game that I just jumped into here recently, is Panzer Paladin on the Switch. And this is a downloadable title. And I think it's only on the Switch and the PC. So if you're playing consoles right now, it's only on Switch. And man, I gotta say, this game is fucking awesome. Like it is legitimately fantastic. Now I've played about 5 to 6 hours of it. I think I'm getting close to the end. But it is just so good. It's awesome. I've heard it was good, but playing it now, I'm like, okay, yeah, I get it. This game is good. And this is a game that's clearly influenced from like the old school Mega Man games, because after you kind of beat the opening level, then it opens up this world map, and each kind of world stage has its own boss. I mean, it's right out of Mega Man. And and this morning, actually, I just beat the final bosses I need to beat all of the world map bosses. And then I think I've just made it now to the final area and like the final game boss, I believe. I don't know, but man, like the pixel art is it's gorgeous, great art style, looks really good. It's got that classic gameplay of, platforming, attacking your enemies. And I gotta say, it's definitely challenging in the beginning. Like I was getting my ass handed to me on a couple of the first world stages that I was trying to get to and go to the bosses and stuff like that. But as I kind of got my bearings under me, played through a couple levels, even though I'd make it to the boss and run out of lives, and then just, leveled up my character a little bit, because you can kind of increase your health, and really that's the only leveling up you do. But once you start to do that, and kind of get used to the game and kind of find a boss you can take down. It starts to become a little easier, I would say. And I definitely feel like this game has the Shovel Knight level of quality. Now it's not as good as Shovel Knight. I think Shovel Knight is still kind of the pinnacle of modern classic styled games, but this is up there with it. I would say it's up there in the same ballpark because it's just so good. It's got that Shovel Knight quality, man. It's awesome. And so I would say if you like retro games or 2D games, platforming games, or kind of just classic style games, like you should definitely check this out. It is worth it. And right now, it's been on my wish list for a while, and right now it just went on sale for 50% off on the eShop, Nintendo eShop. So it's $10, which is a great deal. So if you're interested, definitely check it out. And like I said, I plan to get back to Elden Ring, but I would say kind of playing these other more, smaller sized games that are completely different genres than like an open world RPG style game has been nice. It's been a nice change of pace, and I think that's what I needed because, I was kind of thinking about it. I went from Dying Light 2 at the beginning of February, and really this podcast, I gotta say, when I launched it. But Dying Light 2, I put in 30-ish hours into that. Didn't beat it, but then I had to jump into Horizon, which I put in probably, 80 or so hours. Got the platinum on that, and then jumped into Elden Ring and put in another 30 hours, give or take. And all of those are just big open world games. And so I kind of think I kind of burnt myself out on the open world genre and kind of needed to cleanse the palate a little bit. But I'm also torn because another game just came out this past Tuesday, so on the 10th of May, I believe, called Salt and Sacrifice. And this is the second game, the follow-up from I think it's Ska Studios is the developer, from their first game, Salt and Sanctuary, which is basically a 2D Souls-like game. And Salt and Sanctuary is awesome. Like, that game came out, I loved it. And actually, I got to meet one of the developers at their booth when I went to PAX, I think in 2016, PAX West, which was really cool. And, nice folks. I think they're a very, very small studio too, if I recall. But their next game, Salt and Sacrifice, launched, and I really want to pick it up and start playing it because I loved the first game. I want to support the developer. So, man, there's just so many games to play, man. It's funny because as you get older and, have more disposable income, you have less time to play video games. So you can buy all the games you want. And that's kind of the joke. You can buy all the games you want. You just never have the time to play them all. So, I don't know. I guess first world problems, right? The last thing I want to say, though, is I also discovered this other game called Sword of the Vagrant that comes out for consoles, so Xbox, PlayStation, and Switch this June. And I guess it was originally launched on PC in 2018 called The Vagrant. So they changed up the little name. Maybe there's some additional content or something like that. But this game looks awesome. So go check it out. Sword of the Vagrant, and that's spelled Vagrant. It's got a beautiful artwork. It's like hand-painted art style. Really reminds me of like Dragon's Crown and all of the games from Vanillaware, if you know those guys. Like just beautiful, gorgeous looking graphics in art design. And this is an action RPG. And it just looks super fun. Like it looks awesome. Like they show off some boss battles in the gameplay and kind of just combat and and I gotta say, the main character you play, like she's one of those some might say sexualized character because it's this female and she's, her boobs are kind of hanging out or whatever. But I'm not going to complain. No complaints for me. But it looks awesome. So I'm going to keep my eye on that game when it drops. And, I'll probably get it on PlayStation 5. But it does look like it could be a good Switch game as well, kind of handheld. So check it out. I think it looks awesome. And also, let me know which games you've been playing. Let's get that in the show. So now let's dive into some of the news items that have happened this week. The first one, kind of a small one, but I want to mention it because I'm super excited about it, is EA announced a release date for the Dead Space Remake. That is now coming out January 27th, 2023. So starting off 2023 with that game. And I'm A-okay with that. So they also, I think they did maybe some sort of little live stream because there was some concept art that came out and they talked a little bit about the game. And I'm very much looking forward to this. Like, very much looking forward to this. Like, I love the Dead Space games. I genuinely love those games. And I think the first Dead Space is arguably one of the best survival horror games ever made. I think it is that good. It is fantastic. And I think I'm probably one of the few people I genuinely enjoyed Dead Space 2. I think that is a really good game. And probably one of the few people that enjoyed Dead Space 3. And I understand when that game came out, I understand the criticism about it because it's kind of it introduced like co-op. Like that's the first Dead Space where you had co-op, which really doesn't fit into that game. But it was there. So you could do co-op. But more the bigger, controversy with that game was its microtransactions. I think you'd buy like various weapon parts and stuff like that. If I remember correctly, I actually think I did a YouTube video back in the day when this game launched talking about that game's microtransactions because that was pretty early on in the microtransaction world, being introduced in video games. So yeah, I don't know if you go check out the YouTube channel if you want to check out that video. I'm pretty sure it's out there. But I understand the criticisms for that, and I didn't play the game co-op. I don't know why this game had co-op, but that aside, I still think it is a good. It's the weakest of the 3 Dead Spaces, but I still enjoyed it. Still thought it was a good game. But yeah, I mean, Dead Space is just so good, and so I'm just thinking about the first Dead Space game. If they do a faithful remake to it, similar to what Capcom did with Resident Evil 2, just keeping it very faithful, but modern lighting, modern graphics, I think you could have something special, like something awesome. Because just thinking about playing Dead Space with a higher frame rate, more detailed graphics, in some of the insane lighting you see out there, man, ooh, that game is going to be just so dope. Like, yeah, I'm super looking forward to this. So hopefully it doesn't get pushed out. Seems to be the trend with some of these bigger games, but either way, I'm pretty excited for this one. Dead Space is awesome. And I really actually, last thing I'll say about this is I really hope that the remake is successful to where we either see a Dead Space 4 or they continue to remake the rest of the Dead Space games. But knowing that Dead Space is alive again just makes me happy because that was one of the franchises that I was super sad EA just kind of abandoned and killed because I think it was made by Visceral Games, which they shut down that studio back in the day. So yeah, Dead Space remake, looking forward to it. January 27th, 2023. Now, the next piece of news that I want to discuss is there was a bunch of stuff that dropped for Gotham Knights, and the biggest being a gameplay demo video. They also, I don't think it was announced before, but now the game has a release date. So the game comes out October 25th, 2022, so later this year. And the video that they dropped was approximately 13 minutes, and it shows off gameplay for Red Hood and Nightwing. And they show, a couple, I think crime interventions that you do, like little side missions, one of the main stories, and then kind of your hub. But one of the biggest criticisms I've seen online about this is Nightwing's hang glider. So like right at the beginning of the demo, they show off Nightwing, and then he jumps off, this building, and then it has his hang glider and kind of flies down to these, the bad guys committing a crime. And it's, a lot of people say it's copy and paste from Breath of the Wild or Fortnite. And I even saw someone saying it's a immersion breaking because right when he, lets go of it, it just disappears, which I could see that. But for me, like, I just think I gotta admit, it does look funny. Like, it seems weird. Like the guy just has a hang glider just flying around with that thing. Cause like, that's how he gets around. Like it's not you just kind of float down. Like that's how he gets around. Like he's just flying on this hang glider through Gotham. It's kind of funny, and it does feel a little off. So I I semi agree with that criticism. And the other criticism I'm seeing kind of floating out there is that the game does look a little rough and kind of has like old animations. And I semi agree with that. It does look a little, just a little. There's something about the game that just looks a little off to me, and I can't tell if it's the the person that was playing the demo, like if they weren't very good or very demo like. Like kind of, it almost kind of looked like someone that maybe was still kind of learning the game because it wasn't very fluid gameplay that they were showing off or anything like that. Or if it's just a little archaic, like that this game is just not up to kind of some of the modern standards we've kind of come to get used to. So I just can't put my finger on it, but it does feel a little off for this game. Now, I did mention the video showed off the hub area, which is kind of this like abandoned building top, this huge abandoned building top with like all your computers and your bat suits and all your bat gear and stuff like that. And then they showed off that this is where you kind of customize and upgrade your equipment, and they showed off the menu, and it's just this your typical RPG menu with a bunch of different stats. And I just like, for me, watching this and finally like seeing this, I'm just thinking to myself, like, I feel like they just turned the Arkham games into a generic RPG. You could even say they did the same with Dying Light 2. Like Dying Light 2, they went away from a very survival horror themed game to just a generic RPG and inject a bunch of other RPG elements in there. So it's like I just don't know why we got to go this way. Because I don't remember Arkham Asylum and even Arkham City and what is it? Arkham Knight, the most recent one. Like those games, they have, upgrades and different, abilities and stuff like that you can kind of level up your character that way, but it doesn't feel like a typical RPG, like a Western RPG. It feels very, I would say, authentic to like what Batman would use and how he'd upgrade his tools and stuff like that. And then just looking at this, it just, man, I don't know. I just get generic RPG vibes from it. Because there's even like crime intervention, right? So there were a bunch of dudes that were like robbing an ATM or something. That's how the trailer opened. And, Nightwing stops them. And then there's another one where Red Hood is driving a motorcycle, like the Bat Cycle, and he's chasing this van and like basically crashes the van to stop the bad guys. And I like that van chasing thing feels to me like it was ripped right out of Spider-Man from the PS4, if Spider-Man PS4 game. Because in there you do a bunch of crime waves happen, and these are like these random side activities that pop up, and you literally do the same thing. You chase the van, and then you hop on the van and stop it, cause it to crash, and arrest the bad guys. That's the same thing here with Red Hood in this Gotham Knights game. So I don't know. Overall, I kind of feel like there's just really like no new ideas here. It's all kind of just borrowed things. And that's not always necessarily bad, but I feel like we've seen this stuff before, especially recently. So I don't know, man. I don't know. After seeing this, I'm a little hesitant, I gotta say. But one positive thing I will say about it is I think the story could be pretty cool because looks like they're doing the Court of Owls, and that's a Batman story that I don't know very much about because I never read the comics or kind of learned about the Court of Owls, but I've always heard it's really cool. And actually, I know that recent Robert Pattinson The Batman movie. I think they're doing a sequel, and it's rumored that they can do Court of Owls for that too. So I just think that's awesome because it just hasn't really been done before, and so I'm excited to learn more about that story. So that could be a saving grace for this game. So I'm excited for that. I would say that's the one positive thing that could be a really cool story to play through for the Court of Owls and the kind of this Batman Arkham universe. And lastly, they did confirm that the game is 2-player co-op. There was kind of this thing going on that some people were like, oh, maybe it's 4-player co-op, but no, it's just 2. But I have zero interest in if I play this game, I'm not going to play it cooperatively. It just seems really weird. I like those games especially, man. That's a single player game to me. So I'm hoping that it's still fun to play by yourself, even if you don't want to partake in that co-op game. Like, I don't know. In watching the gameplay too, I kind of get the sense that maybe it was a single player first and then kind of co-op added on, just because they have so many, these Batman characters. So I don't know. We'll see. I'm still skeptical on this game. I'll kind of likely wait for some reviews to come out, see if it's something I want to pick up. But yeah, check out the gameplay video, about 13 minutes long, for Gotham Knights, coming out October 25th of this year. Now, the last piece of news that I wanted to touch on was the Indie World Showcase from Nintendo. And I kind of want to go through each of the games that was announced and kind of highlight the ones that I think are interesting. So that's the format we'll do. I'll walk you through the showcase here. Now, the showcase was just a little over 20 minutes long. And I think they showed just over, about 20 or so games. So pretty beefy, I'd say. Now, the first game they opened up with is called Ooblets. And this is a farming simulator game where you farm, but you can also collect creatures called Ooblets. So interesting kind of mashup there. And kind of an interesting art style too, I must say. That's coming out summer. And actually, before I move on, a lot of these games kind of had these generic release windows. Summer, fall, holiday, winter, whatever. 2023. And I was kind of disappointed in that. And I understand that, with indie devs, it's usually a small team of people. So they, we're trying to get the game out, and it's going to take them a little bit longer. I can understand that. Maybe they don't want to hold themselves to a certain release date and, not be able to meet it. So I can understand that, but I don't know. I was kind of hoping for a little bit more there, but I digress. After that, they showed a game called Batora Lost Haven, and this is an action RPG that actually I would say kind of looked kind of neat. Maybe something to keep an eye out on, and that's coming this fall. And then after that, one of probably my favorite game that they showed here, the game I'm certainly most interested in, is called Elect Head. And that's like electricity, but Elect Head. And this is a 2D puzzle platformer from a one-person development team. And it was kind of cool. He got to, talking to the camera, and he said this game started as a project in school. And then after he graduated, he wanted to turn it into a full-fledged game and release it, which is super awesome. And so this game is coming out summer. And like I said, I think this game just looks really, really cool. Because you play this little robot, this cute little robot dude, and you navigate these puzzles and kind of platform your way through these levels. And the graphics they're to some probably super generic, very basic. I would say the colors are pretty basic because it's really blue or yellow that you're dealing with. And so the mechanic here is, though, as the robot touches platforms and different things, that's what causes electricity to those things and kind of moves things or opens doors or platforms or whatever. So I think it's, I don't know, I just think it looks really cool. And, as I was kind of watching it, I'm getting vibes that this could be a game not necessarily to the same success as like a Celeste or something like that, but kind of up there in terms of maybe critical success. I don't know, just there's something about this game that I was like, this looks really cool and could be something special. I don't know. I could be totally wrong with that. And I'm not saying this game is going to be a Celeste, but I feel like it could be something pretty cool and worth your time to play. I don't know. It just spoke to me, I guess. So check it out. Elect Head coming in summer. I'm going to keep my eye on that one. And then after that, they showed a game called Soundfall, which is a rhythm-based dungeon crawler. And this one was kind of interesting because it's basically a dungeon crawler combined with looter shooter action. Is that's kind of how they described it. And there's 140, I think they said over 140 songs that you can listen to and play to. And the whole point of it is you're kind of listening to the music, and if you can kind of sync up your attacks and your moves with the music, I think you get like bonuses and stuff like that. So kind of an interesting concept, I must say. And there's skill and item customization and all that stuff. And that actually dropped that day on May 11th. So if you want to check that out, it's out and ready for you to play. So I thought it looked kind of neat concept. I don't know if it's necessarily for me, but either way, that came out. After that is Wild Frost, and this is a roguelike deck builder. And I think this is also being published by Chucklefish, which is the same publisher that published Stardew Valley. So I would say quality stuff they seem to do. But man, I'm not huge on roguelikes. There are very few of them that I get into. Obviously the bigger ones like Dead Cells, Hades, to name a couple off the top of my head. Generally, I don't like roguelikes typically because I don't like doing the same things over and over again, but there are exceptions to that, as I said. And I have to have a sense of progression, which is why I think I like those games, like a Dead Cells, Hades, because you do have a sense of progression, even though you kind of play the same levels over and over. But I don't like deck builders. I just don't enjoy card games online. Now, when I was a kid, obviously, I played the Pokemon card game, and I played Star Wars, the trading card game. If any of you older folks remember that, I actually still have quite a bit of my cards and a complete set of one of them. So it's probably worth some money these days. But nonetheless, this game is just not for me. So if you're into deck building games, then maybe check out Wild Frost. That's coming out this holiday. After that is a game called Tabs, which stands for Totally Accurate Battle Simulator. And this game, it looks just goofy as hell. It's and it's funny because they had the developers, these two ladies come out and talk about the game and kind of what inspired it and all that. But just watching this gameplay, it just looks ridiculous. This is a very physics-based game where you kind of customize these goofy-looking soldiers, and then you just go into these ridiculous battle scenarios and just watch this crazy physics and just chicanery unfold. But like I said, it just looks ridiculous, but in a funny way. And I gotta say though, this is one of those games where it's probably going to be fun to play for 20 minutes, or for content creators to make a video, or streamers to stream for a day and just play for a little bit, have some good laughs, and then never touch it again. Like, it just fits into those games where it's just super goofy, good for a laugh or two, and then you don't touch it ever again. That's what I get from this game, which is coming out in the summer. After that is another one that I thought looked really, really cool, and I'm going to keep my eye out on, is called Gunbrella. That's Gunbrella. And this is published by Devolver Digital, who typically publishes quality stuff, so I'm optimistic about this one. And this is a 2D kind of platforming game, like, and a little bit of shoot 'em up too, maybe. I'll de-emphasize the shoot 'em up, but you do kind of take down enemies. But they also said it's like a noir detective story as well. So you're gonna kind of play through this story, unfold, find clues, and kind of learn more about this mystery you're trying to solve. And it sounds awesome. Looks really cool too. Very cute art style. And the mechanic here, because the main character's got a gunbrella, which is a gun, but he can also use the umbrella to like float down to different areas, or like swing across things and all that stuff. So it looks really cool. But this one is coming out in 2023, they said. So we got to wait a little bit for this one. But I'm going to keep my eye out on it because it looks pretty cool. Check it out, Gunbrella. After that is the game called We Are OFK. And this is the musical narrative game. I think they showed this off at one of the State of Plays not that long ago, maybe 6 months or so ago. And so it's a musical narrative game telling kind of this story, but it's about the band, the actual band. So there's a band called OFK. This is how I understand it. And this is a musical game kind of, I guess, telling their story. And it's episodic. So they said episodes will be released weekly. So I don't know, man. I just think this is an interesting concept, I guess, but does not speak to me whatsoever. Like, I don't know. Not for me. But and I've never been big into episodic games either, too. Like I've played a couple of the Telltale games, but I've never been a fan of that episodic kind of releases. So yeah, not for me. Then a game called Silt, S-I-L-T. And this is a puzzle adventure exploring game that's all underwater. So you're exploring this kind of underwater realm, and it has a really unique art style and kind of interesting lighting effects. And I think it looks really cool. Kind of looks like a Metroidvania kind of puzzle adventure exploring game. And I also saw, so this isn't a Switch exclusive for this one that I did see, because I did see PlayStation highlighted it, said it's coming out. So this comes out in June. So be sure to check that one out. I thought this one looked kind of cool. And then after that is really interesting game, I got to say, called Mini Motorways. And this is basically a game where you draw and build roads to help the flow of traffic. So you're kind of puzzle solving. And one of the cool things about this one is they said that the maps and levels are inspired by real cities. So I think that's kind of neat, kind of a neat factor there. So you've got traffic kind of builds up, you can kind of design and build these new roads to help the flow of traffic. And that's another one that stealth dropped. So it dropped later that day on May 11th. And so if you want to check that out, it's available. It's actually one that kind of does look fun, I gotta say. Like one of those kind of puzzle games to kind of play here and there as you see fit. So I don't know. Maybe I'll check it out one of these days, but I do think it looks cool. After that is a game called Wayward Strand, and I gotta be honest, in my notes, I didn't really put anything about this game because I think I get distracted. That comes out July 21st though, so check it out. After that is a game called Cult of the Lamb, which is coming out later this year, and this is a survival style game. So, think of the likes of I cannot think of the game. I can picture it in my head, but I can't think of it. Don't Starve. So it kind of has that Don't Starve vibes. That's what I'm thinking of. Don't Starve. So survival style game, but it's mixed with dungeon crawling, combat, and exploration as well. So interesting. Not for me. Didn't really speak to me, but check that one out if you like those style of games. And then the last full game that they showed was called Another Crab's Treasure, and the developers got to talk about them, a couple of young dudes, and they had some fun with it. And this is a Souls-like game. So it's inspired by the Souls games. It's got that action RPG combat and all that. And so it looks interesting. I gotta say, it looks pretty interesting. And actually, one of the interesting mechanics with it is that, so you're a little crab, and as you navigate the world, you can find various pieces of trash and debris, and you can make that your shell. And that's actually one of the game mechanics. Is I think they said if you don't have some form of shell, you can get one-shotted by any enemies. So having a shell offers you a level of protection. So that's vitally important. So I don't know, kind of cool. Check it out. Interesting trailer. Maybe a game to keep an eye out for. That game comes out in 2023. And the last thing that they showed was actually a montage of several indie games. And at the very end, which I thought was really, really odd. So those games were One Shot World Machine Edition, Gibbon Beyond the Trees, Idle Manager, Card Shark, which that game actually had a really cool art style, I gotta say. Let's see, A Guidebook of Babel, and then Opus Echo of the Soar Song. So I gotta be honest, because it was just this montage of all these games, I don't really know what all these games are or when they're coming out. But I don't know, just what a weird way to end the show. I'm almost wondering if maybe they had something kind of bigger that backed out at the last minute, and so they kind of just filled in that space. Because I don't know. It just, you never end a show on this weird kind of montage. I don't know, just really, I don't know, I think it's weird. Don't you think it's weird? Like, why? Why you do that? But overall, I gotta say, I thought it was an okay showing. Again, with these showcases, you have to realize not every game is going to speak to you, and not every single showcase is going to drop a banger. Now, am I disappointed they didn't talk about Silksong? Absolutely. But let's be honest, as I think about that more, that's probably going to be in a regular Nintendo Direct, so I shouldn't even really expect that. But there are a couple other indie games that I was looking forward to. such as I said Silk Song, Silk Song, Song of the Stars, or Sea of the Stars. I think that game is. That's that Chrono Trigger inspired RPG that looks freaking awesome. I cannot wait for that game. I was hoping to get a release date for that. There's also the Stardew Valley devs' next game called The Haunted Chocolatier, which I think a lot of people are looking forward to. Because, I mean, look, Stardew Valley, I think I saw a number out there. They just surpassed 20 million sold, which is insane because that's a game that was made by one guy. So that guy's sitting really pretty by now. But his next game, I think Stardew Valley is so special. It's a really special game that you have to expect that magic will translate into his next game. And it kind of has those similar vibes in gameplay style. So I'm eager to see more about that game and get a release date for that. So yeah, I'm a little sad that those games that I was looking forward to weren't talked about, but you know, what can you do? I still thought there were a couple interesting games that I'm going to keep my eye out on. And then actually, the Gaming Con dropped a comment. He wrote in and said, in response to the show, said it was okay. I mean, Mini Motorways is a really good game. Is a really good game. Tabs is also okay. Let me take a step back and read that because he didn't put any like commas or anything in here. So he said it was okay. I mean, Mini Motorways is a really good game. Tabs is also awesome, but nice little vid. I'll sub. And I did make a quick YouTube short video about this. Quick response talking about the games I didn't, get to see, which I was super excited for. So yeah, appreciate you, Gaming Con. Thank you for the sub. Hope you enjoy some of the future content we'll be creating as well as the podcast. So shout out to you. Yeah, but that was the Indie World Showcase. So I don't know. At least we got something. And now, 40 or so minutes into the show, let's get into that main big news story. The main topic of the show. Redfall and Starfield have been delayed. So, Bethesda came out with a statement and that they said that they made the decision to delay both games until the first half of 2023. And this lit the internet on fire. My goodness. Just, whoo! I mean, that's big news. These are, man, like Starfield is a highly anticipated game by a lot of people. So if you recall, Starfield was originally slated for November 11th of this year, which, if I'm not mistaken, is the same month and day that Skyrim released, but 11 years earlier. So they're not going to make that, which is kind of a missed opportunity. They're kind of a bummer. And then Redfall was slated for summer 2022. And we actually talked about both of these in a couple episodes ago where I gave my predictions for the upcoming Xbox showcase, what I think will be shown off there. I still think Starfield will get in-depth gameplay. And, well, my prediction about Redfall will probably is wrong because I said that game will likely come out in August since it was slated for summer. So that ain't going to happen anymore. That's coming out sometime next year. So what are you going to do? But I don't think we can understate how big this is. I think this is massive. This is huge. And as I've said before, I think Starfield is the first test of the new Xbox and kind of will be the first indication if all of these acquisitions that they've done really since 2018 is going to start to pay off and really turn the tide for Xbox and really kind of squash the point that Xbox has no exclusives. I think Starfield is that first indication and answer to that. And there's so much hype around Starfield, like a ridiculous amount of hype. Like to the point where I honestly don't think the game will live up to the hype, even with this delay. And it, the delay in and of itself isn't bad because you delay a game, whatever. You're going to use that time to make the game better. So it's going to come out in presumably a better state than it would have before. So that's not a bad thing at all. But this leaves the question though, what does Xbox have for this fall and the rest of 2022? Because so far we're in 5 months into 2022 and Xbox hasn't released an exclusive yet. They've had new games come to Xbox Game Pass, for sure. Every month there's a slew of new games coming there. They've had some day and date titles from third parties come over there. So good on them, but where's the first party games? I think they have over 23 studios, not including Activision, Blizzard, so which is even more now. So they probably have close to 30 plus studios in the first party lineup. So it's like, okay, where are the first party games? Like, it's halfway through 2022 and we don't have anything. Meanwhile, their competitor on the PlayStation end has launched several. Horizon Forbidden West. There's the Babylon's Fall exclusivity, which that game is garbage anyways. But there's Gran Turismo 7. Gosh, I know there's another one that I cannot think of, but either way, my point being is that their competitor over at Sony and PlayStation has released several and still have several more slated this year, assuming they don't get delayed, like God of War Ragnarok. There's been a lot of speculation that Final Fantasy 16 is ready to go and will release this year, which is a console exclusive for PlayStation. And I think there's, again, another one that just escapes me as I'm recording this podcast, so I sound like an idiot. That's awesome. But either way, that's the question. And I actually made a YouTube short about this up on the YouTube channel, so check that out, youtube.com/Gamecite if you want to see that, as well as subscribe for future content and the podcast as well. It's always appreciate that. It's always nice. But I did say that I do think there are still some games that will make 2022 for Xbox from the first party. And those are Hellblade 2. I still think Hellblade 2 will come out. We've seen, I think it was at the Game Awards, we saw a pretty long gameplay video for Hellblade 2. And so I think this game has got to be close to ready. And I feel like this game could launch this fall and kind of help fill that void. So I still think Hellblade 2 will come out. I also still think Forza Motorsport 8 will come out. Again, I've said it in our Xbox episode a couple episodes ago that it's their time. Like, it's the, Forza Motorsports, next in line to go. So I think that'll launch this fall. And then there's a game called Scorn, which is a second party exclusive. And this is a horror game from Ebb Software. And they showed a trailer, gosh, I think it was last year at their showcase, on Xbox's showcase in June, that looked really, really, really interesting. Like, this game has like weird stuff going on, like weird environments, and you almost kind of get a little bit of Aliens vibe or like Prometheus vibes from those movies. And I don't know, just it looks really weird. And I was actually trying to look at Ebb Software from these guys, and I think these guys must be a new studio that have formed, because I couldn't find anything about this team, like what other games they had made. So I think this is the first game from them. So we'll see if that's any good. I do think that game will still come out this year. I think it's slated for this year. So I do think that'll come out. Who knows if it'll be any good or not? Because again, I can't find that studio's track record. And then lastly, I think Deathloop will come over to Xbox. Their 1-year exclusivity is up in September. So why, the game is ready. Why wouldn't it release on Game Pass in September for Xbox? So I think those 4 games will still come out to help fill the gap. I don't think they do nearly as much as either of those games for Xbox. I mean, Forza Motorsport's got its fans out there, but the rest of them are, I don't know, very niche games, I'd say, especially Hellblade and Scorn. Deathloop might have some more appeal. I think a lot of people will probably be excited to play that on the Xbox ecosystem. So, but yeah, that'll help. I think that'll help fill the gap. I don't think it's gonna do much, if I'm being honest. But I think the other thing that Xbox is going to do is I think they're going to end up forking over some big cash to pull in a third-party game on Game Pass for day one, like day and date. Get a big third-party game, day and date on Game Pass, just to, again, help fill that void of Starfield. And I was trying to think about this, like, okay, what are some big kind of third-party games coming out that could make a move to be on Game Pass day one? And so I'm just going to throw a couple titles on here. And just because I feel like They're games Xbox could go for and put on Game Pass. I don't know. So just kind of throwing it out there. Let me know what you think. But the first game is Saints Row. So the new Saints Row game, which I think is supposed to come out September, I think, because that game got pushed back, if I recall. But I could see this game coming to Game Pass day and date. Xbox trying to get out this, go for this game. I think it's gonna be an interesting game to see when it releases, anyways, too, because it fills the void of Grand Theft Auto, like single player Grand Theft Auto games that we just don't have anymore because they're so focused on the GTA Online, which makes them a ridiculous amount of money. So I can understand, but still, I think a lot of players are hungry for kind of a single player GTA style game. So we'll see how Saints Row does. I'm not super interested in it, but I think there are quite a few people that might like it and are interested in trying it out. Another game which I could definitely see coming to Game Pass day one is Skull and Bones. We've been talking about this game for the last couple weeks. I think this game is slated to come out this year. I think it's finally ready. And I think because it is a live service, multiplayer focused game now, that putting it on Game Pass kind of makes sense to try to get people in the door. So that's one I could definitely see Microsoft, hunting down and shilling out to get on Game Pass. And I also put in just an unannounced Ubisoft title. I could just see them again reaching out to Ubisoft and just looking for some unannounced title we might not know about, just to have a big splash, at their showcase and say, coming day and date this fall on Game Pass. Again, to help fill that void. And the last game that I threw on here, just because I think some people were speculating that they need to go out and get this game on Game Pass, is Gotham Knights. And I don't see WB actually agreeing to this deal, putting Gotham Knights on Game Pass. I don't see it. But I'd be shocked if it actually happened. So who knows at this point? But I think that the one I feel pretty confident on, though, out of all those, is Skull and Bones. I gotta say, I do think they could go out and get Skull and Bones, put that on Game Pass, and flaunt it a little bit. But I kind of feel like this is an obvious prediction, I gotta say, in the fact that Xbox will just go out and just shill out a gross amount of money to get a game, not an exclusive game per se, but just a game day and date on Game Pass to help fill this void that they now have in their 2022 lineup this fall. So the other thing I wanted to touch on here is I gotta admit, it's been kind of amusing looking at the reactions from folks online. And with my Twitter account at Gamecite Podcast, which you should go follow, I don't follow a ton of people on there like I do with my more personal account. If you want to follow that, it's at Bonfire777. But because I don't follow so many people, the algorithm is just feeding me, content based on kind of my likes, what posts I've interacted with, stuff, and in it. So I get a lot of gaming stuff from a lot of people that I just don't, I don't follow and don't even know about. And it's just interesting to see the random takes on there. Like, genuinely, it's pretty comical, and it's just interesting to see the fanboyism and what the crazy hoops people will jump through to defend their console of choice. It's pretty comical, I gotta say. But you see just the sheer disappointment and then justification from the Xbox fanboys. Some sort of justification. And it's funny because I actually saw IGN post a video, I think titled something like, Xbox's 2023 is going to be amazing. And it's like, oh, okay, 6 months ago you were talking about how 2022 was going to be amazing. That's kind of the joke at this point. So you also see a lot of like the ambassador types or influencer types just kind of defending this. And again, the delay alone isn't the problem. There's no bad delay. It's it's the fact that this kind of consistently happens with Microsoft. It, I kind of, I think about it, and it kind of leads me to believe that something's going on there to where Xbox cannot manage their studios. I feel like this helps shine a light on that even more so, because we've seen this before, and again, that's been the criticism during the Xbox One generation. That's kind of the criticism. Obviously it started off on the wrong foot with Don Matrick and this focus on, Xbox, TV, media, blah, blah, blah. And then the DRM thing was a big issue, which Sony absolutely capitalized on. And they started off just in a really bad position. And I'll give Phil Spencer some credit, because he came in and kind of turned the ship around and really changed the perception of the Xbox brand and, pioneered subscription services in gaming with Game Pass. And I think he, in doing so, has got and generated a lot of goodwill with consumers and, Xbox fans. And I think rightfully so in a lot of ways. There's been a lot of great things, but one thing still remains is there is a lack of high quality first party titles. Like must-haves, must-plays, console selling first party titles from Xbox. Now, because I got my Xbox One games behind me on my shelf here, and kind of looking through some of those, I can really only think of 2 Xbox One exclusives, maybe 3, maybe, that I think kind of warrant the console. Actually, I'm going to say 2, because the third one really isn't. Those are Gears 4, which I touched on early in the show. I think that game is phenomenal. One of the best games on Xbox One. And I really think the Coalition did a good job on that game. Less so on number 5, but I do think they did a good job on Gears 4. And the other one is Sunset Overdrive. And funny enough, that's from Insomniac Games, which is now a PlayStation first-party studio. But Sunset Overdrive is phenomenal. Like, that game is awesome. Genuinely awesome. And I would say must play on the Xbox One. And I think it's on Game Pass, so go play it. Like, there's no excuse. If not, I'm pretty sure it's like $5 to go pick up. So do yourself a favor and play that game. It is genuinely fun and really, really good. But outside of those, like, there's a bunch of other games that are just kind of middle of the pack. I think of one game that I was really excited for, like Recore. That game, I think, was from the Mega Man creator. And it looked really cool when it was first shown. And I loved the idea of kind of this post-apocalyptic world. You have these little robot companions, and it's kind of this like shooter, and it just looked really fun. And then you play the game, and I enjoyed it up until the end. Like the last ending bit of that game was atrocious. The way you had to kind of like grind and level up, and these level requirements, and terrible stuff. And overall, that game was kind of just meh. Like, it had some fun moments, but it wasn't groundbreaking. And then Halo 5, which I think a lot of people can agree that wasn't really that great of a campaign, and the multiplayer certainly had its problems, though I've heard they turned that ship around. They had the Master Chief Collection, which came out, but that came out broken. And again, that's another one they turned the ship around. But that is all of the goodwill and the games from the 360 era. So you can't really count that one. They had, actually, thinking another one, Quantum Break from Remedy. That game is actually pretty good. I enjoyed that one. And I'd say that is worth your time. So I take that back. There are 3 games. But then I also think about like what else? Actually, Super Lucky's Tale was pretty good, but now that is multi-platform, so that is no longer an exclusive. But that was actually a pretty good game when it came out. And a funny story about that game is the last PAX West I went to, which I think was 2017, that game was shown off there, and they had like that's when I got to play it, and I actually was like, wow, this is because there wasn't a line for it, and kind of looking at the game, I was like, this game looks like super kiddish, not for me. But after playing it, since there wasn't a line, I was like, I'll just hop in, I'll play it, try it out, why not? I was like, this game's actually pretty fun, and so I ended up picking it up and playing through it, and it genuinely is a fun game. So check that one out. I know that one's on Game Pass for sure, but I know they have a bunch of other kind of console exclusives that I can't think of right now because they're so middle of the pack, kind of generic. But then I even think about, a game or two they put out in the Xbox Series X generation. I think about the Medium, which that was pretty close to the Xbox Series X launch. Started out as a console exclusive. I know it's now come to PlayStation, but that's another one where it's just like that game was just kind of meh, like not a console seller. And I know, let's see, they had what is that game called? Grounded, which is that kind of survival style multiplayer game from, I think, Obsidian. I know that has come out, and again, that game is just kind of meh as well. And so I don't know, I just looking at kind of the Xbox ecosystem, and if you put aside the value of Game Pass, because I know that's the argument, but if you put that aside and you say, okay, what are the big must play first party games on Xbox? And I don't think you really have an argument. Now, Forza Horizon 5 may be the answer to that. They've done a good job with that, though I feel like that's one of those games that have kind of come and gone. Like, it made a big splash. I dabbled into it. I do think it was fun, but not necessarily my style of game. But I see the appeal. And then Halo Infinite, which I think to 343's credit, they did a pretty solid campaign. Again, it has its criticisms, and I think rightfully so. But the multiplayer is supposedly really good, but there's just been like no updates, and like the seasons aren't that great. There's no like new maps, and there's a bunch of broken, like missing features and stuff like that. And I think even to this day, if I'm not mistaken, so it's like, okay, so you've kind of, okay, you put it out there, but now you're not supporting it, seemingly, or something's up. So I don't know, man. Xbox is in this situation where I think they have trouble managing their studios. And I think, I gotta say, I think this does go back to Phil and Phil Spencer, where like you just can't do it. Like you already have way too many studios, and you can't manage them. Like I don't understand what goes on there. Now I will say, I don't think the Starfield and Redfall delays were particularly Phil Spencer's fault, because I know these games were already in development before the acquisition. But like I said, this isn't a new thing for Xbox. There's kind of always been that criticism of lack of first party games, and I still think it to this day, I mentioned it before, still persists. Now again, if you look at big console exclusives in this new generation, so the Xbox Series X and PlayStation, I mentioned you got Forza Horizon 5 and Halo Infinite. But if you compare that, and you had the likes of like the medium, I should say, not medium, in like games like Crossfire X, which that one was a dud. But let's take the two biggest titles, Halo Infinite and Forza Horizon 5, and you compare that to their competitors in PlayStation and Nintendo, and it's just like shameful. I hate to say it and put it like that, but I mean, let's be real here. Nintendo, the king of first party, which, I mean, that's why people get a Nintendo is for those first party games. But even this year alone, they've put out some bangers, like that new Pokemon game, Pokemon Arceus, the new Kirby game. I know there's another one that I can't think of. Gosh, my mind keeps going blank. But even later this year, they've got let's see, Splatoon 3. They've got that Fire Emblem Warriors game. They've got Live a Live, and Gosh, there's another one I can't think of. Oh, they also put out Triangle Strategy, which actually that's a third-party exclusive, so I shouldn't technically include that. But banger after banger in the Nintendo camp, okay? And then PlayStation, like we talked about before, with Horizon, Gran Turismo, even though Gran Turismo has had its criticisms and problems. Returnal in the past, they've also had Ratchet and Clank, Miles Morales, Demon Souls. So there's just so many high-quality first-party games on both the other platforms, and you just wonder, like, what's going on over at Xbox? Like, seriously, like, what's going on? And I mentioned it earlier that I do think this is Bethesda's call. And I think part of that is because they know Starfield has to be a home run. Like, I think they recognize that, hey, the last few games we've released have had their issues, have not landed the way we wanted them to. Primarily looking at Fallout 76. I think that game severely, hurt their reputation. And so I think they're looking at that and being like, okay, we got to get this right. We have to get this right. Because they probably could have released it this November, but it likely would have been a buggy mess. That just, again, pure speculation, but that's kind of what I'm thinking. So it's got to be a home run. And I think Phil Spencer also knows that. They're like, hey, the Xbox brand, Game Pass, we got a lot riding on this game. We need to nail it. And I'm sure there's some of that pressure on Bethesda Game Studios. Now with Arcane and Redfall, I think this might have something to do for them on this one being a multiplayer-focused game. And I touched on this before, that Arcane has always really done single-player games. Dishonored, Prey, and then Deathloop were all single-player-focused games. Now, I know Deathloop has the co-op component. I get that. And then I think Prey and Moonfall might have a co-op component as well. But they're generally speaking, they focus on single-player games. And so now, with Redfall, that's presumably a more multiplayer cooperative experience. Maybe that's something that, because they haven't really done it before, they need more time to kind of iron out the kinks. So that again, pure speculation, but that's kind of the way I see these two sitting in the reason for those delays. And so, to kind of sum it all up, I think this is big. This hurts Xbox quite a bit. It'll be interesting to see in their showcase, one, to finally see these games. Presumably we'll see more of these games. Maybe get some Starfield gameplay, which I think a lot of people are looking forward to. But then, what fills the void for the rest of 2022? Because again, the criticism is, you're 5 months in, you haven't really released anything of consequence. So where are the games? And yeah, I don't think you can understate the importance of this announcement and the impact it has, I think, on the brand. Now, I know a lot of people are going to, Xbox will be fine. Yeah, they'll be fine. Of course they'll be fine. And, there's tons of other games to still play on the Xbox. Yes, there is. Other games are coming out for Xbox. It's okay. But you cannot argue the elephant in the room being lack of first-party games. I don't think you can argue that, because that's a problem. And I think it's specifically an Xbox problem, and I think it comes down to how they manage their studios. I don't think they do a very good job of it. So that's all I got for you guys this week. A little bit longer of an episode, but quite a few news stories to get through. But let me know your thoughts on the Xbox situation. How do you feel about the Starfield delays? That's the question of the week. How do you feel about Xbox and these delays? So let me know down in the comments below, right into the show. Love to hear from you guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And don't forget, new episodes of the podcast go up each and every week, Mondays, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Hope to see you there. And until next time, I'm Bonfire, and I will see you online.